around America, there are hundreds of paranormal teams. In central Pennsylvania, there's one team known for their abilities and results, Mo Valley Paranormal. Join us now for a look into the world of hauntings and how the experts investigate the occurrences. This is Mo Valley Paranormal Live with Dave Shannon and Tyson Lidgett.
I'm Dave Shannon. That guy over there is Tyson Lidgett.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
And, of course, Tyson is the founder and lead investigator of Mo Valley Paranormal. You may be familiar with them just in hearing about them in passing, or maybe you saw their TV show, Hometown Haunts, on Fox 8 TV. And, you know, they're probably the cream of the crop when it comes to ghost exploration and evidence collecting in the central part of Pennsylvania. So there they are, doing their thing. Mo Valley Paranormal. Yes. We get started every week with some news about things that may be going on in the paranormal community, maybe new pieces of equipment or things like that. Sometimes we just review suggestions that we have because we know some people maybe are misled somewhat by TV, and we'll talk about that coming up. But first, Tyson has some news, and I don't have the Mo Valley Paranormal news theme, which is right. So that's as close as you're going to get, folks. Here's some Mo Valley Paranormal news with Tyson.
Well, we do have the upcoming lockdown planned. That will be on June 9th and 10th. We are once again doing a two-night event simply because of the size, location, and we're only taking 30 people per night. So we're trying to give as many people as possible to experience the lockdown. That will be in Jennerstown. That is going to be at the 1806 Uniques and Antiques. Gorgeous house. If you love history, if you love antiques, it's a place to go. It was originally built in 1802. Actually stopped in 1804 because of Native American attacks, and finally finished in 1806. And it was built as a stagecoach stop for the area, and it was frequented by General George Washington and his troops, especially during the War of 1812. So a lot of history. I think over 15 deaths associated with that house. We did invest.
Now that's pretty close to Route 30, is it not, Tyson?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, and it's amazing to me. We talk about, and you hear this in America, you hear about Route 66 and how important that is, and the historic nature of Route 66, and the fact that it's fallen by the wayside because they built these things called interstate highways.
Right.
And very few people use the old roads. But Pennsylvania has its very own version of Route 66, and it's Route 30 that goes through Pennsylvania. And as you go along that, you see a lot of historic things as you may be driving around. And it is impressive, and it's not too surprising that Tyson and the crew were contacted by these folks at Jennerstown, and it's not far away from Route 30 because that was a major way that, in the early days when, be it troop movements, be it settlers, whatever it may be, that was one of the main routes that was used in the early days, dating back into the late 1700s, early 1800s. So I interrupt for just a bit to bring up the historic nature. By the way, that's one of those roads, Tyson, at times I'll bring up, you're driving along and you see a place and you go, boy, would I like to investigate that place.
Right.
And you can find tons of those along Route 30. And one of those, 1806 Antiques, and we'll let Tyson pick up with more of the details on the lockdown.
Yeah, it was there are 15 deaths associated with that house, most of which being a whole generation of one family. We did an investigation last November. They called us in because they were doing renovations on the place, and they had some instances where they thought something weird might be going on. Then they accidentally exposed the original cooking hearth to the house, and I guess everything just went crazy after that. Doors opening and closing by themselves, footsteps, the sound of a disembodied voice of a woman, hearing a baby crying is one that's always heard. And these reports are coming from both customers and owners. So, it's being reported by multiple people, the same kind of things over and over again. So we are really excited to get back in there with the public, because a lot of times, the second and third time that you investigate a place, you get more evidence. Almost like whatever's there may trust you more to come out and communicate with you. So
like, I know you.
yeah, right. So we are actually recording on Friday. If you're listening to Ustream, if you're listening to radio, it's Saturday. But reservations will open next Friday. I believe that will be the 5th of May, and they will open at 6 p.m. And like I said, we'll be taking 30 people for Friday, June 9th, and 30 people for Saturday, June 10th. You won't want to miss it. If you've never been on a lockdown with us, it's a lot of fun. It's as educational as it is entertaining. We provide, refreshments and coffee and hot cocoa throughout the night to keep you going. But it's a good time, and we usually experience some pretty cool stuff. So.
And the other part about that, Tyson, too, not only do the folks get to experience the paranormal investigation, procedures that you go through, and really how long it takes sometimes to get any kind of responses, because as Tyson has said, he never guarantees that there's going to be activity at any place. There may be one place that over the course of time that we've talked about that I would say is almost a guarantee. That'd be the Reed Funeral Home. Because that seems like every time you go there, something happens.
Yeah, that's pretty reliable there.
But you still, even at that, you can't guarantee it.
Right.
So, with that in mind, not only do you get the experience of being able to do, maybe you've watched the shows on TV and said, that looks kind of interesting what they do here. And I'd like to do that myself. And so here's your chance to do it. Plus, we had talked about the historic nature of the Clearfield County Jail in our previous lockdown, and now talk about history with this 1806 antiques. Geez.
Yeah, we're excited. It's going to be our first real, I guess you want to say, road lockdown, because everything that we usually do is in our area, and this will be the first time we're actually taking people that may not be from the area. And letting them get on an investigation. So we're excited to have some new blood. We always have new people coming to our lockdowns, but we love our returners. We have a faithful group of people that are at every lockdown, even returning places. And but we love new faces at our lockdowns, and so it's a nice chance to get some new blood involved and open some people's eyes to what Mo Valley Paranormal does.
And also open their eyes to the reality of paranormal investigation, because what you see on television week after week is the culmination of sometimes 2 or maybe even 3 night investigation at a location, and they are sometimes hard pressed to show you an hour's worth of evidence that has been collected. One of the key tips that you can, in any of the shows, if you see the show spending a lot of time explaining the history and this and that and the other thing, which are all important things to know about a property, but if they spend a lot of time on that, like if they spend a half hour of a 1 hour show doing all that stuff, they didn't get much evidence.
Exactly.
And so that's the way they go through it too. It just looks a lot more glamorous on TV because you can edit it down and you can edit your pieces of evidence. And the other thing is too, Tyson, when you consider the evidence that you get, you're talking about sometimes split second, but you're talking about stuff that may last for a couple of seconds at the most.
At the most. At the best, yeah.
Yeah. So it's that kind of thing that, as I say, when you watch TV and you see that, they just spent a lot of time
Right.
at a particular place investigating, and really with not much in the way of results.
And now, since the Kling brothers and Taps are out of the game as far as paranormal TV, what you folks out there are seeing as paranormal reality TV is not a good cross-reference to what actually happens on investigation. It's just not true to form.
Yeah. I mean, there are any number of things that, and I'm quite surprised at times by the reactions of even some of the quote unquote paranormal investigating groups that happen to either show up with these other groups and their TV shows, or are featured in. They had this thing. What the heck was that called? I don't know if it wasn't Paranormal Witness. I don't know why that's sticking. But they had a show on Discovery Channel.
Okay.
And they featured like 4 different paranormal groups and something that an investigation they did. And part of it, a majority of it was a recreation, but parts of it were the actual evidence that they did get during their investigation.
Is that Paranormal Files?
Yeah, that's it. Very good. Thank you. I had forgotten the name of the show, but I'm still shocked at times at the reactions that you get from now. You know, I've had things happen where I kind of jump a little bit, but I'm not been running and screaming.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And it's like, I'm surprised that even outside of, you know, Ghost Adventures has a little bit of a reputation in the later years of falling into that category. And I just don't understand it, because you're investigating the paranormal, for Pete's sake.
Right. You're hoping for this stuff to happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like to overreact. Yeah, you can react to it. You know, if you're standing there and you know no one's around you and you feel somebody tap on your shoulder, you're going to have a reaction to that. It's only natural, because it wasn't expected. And when it does happen, the key is, okay, you react to the fact that you were just tapped on the shoulders, but you don't go running out of the room after it happens.
No.
So at any rate, this upcoming lockdown is going to be a dandy. You'll want to be a part of it. And you'll want to continue listening to this fine radio program, otherwise known as Mo Valley Paranormal Live. And we will continue that after we take this break. You're listening to News Talk 970 WBLF. Welcome back to our regular Saturday evening get-together and discussion of the paranormal and investigating it. And we do that each and every week right here on News Talk 970 WBLF. I'm Dave Shannon. That guy over there is Tyson Lidgett.
Hello, everybody. Glad to have you along tonight.
And we kick off the beginning of the show. We spend our first half hour of the show not doing history. We do news. So once again, we've reviewed what's coming up as far as the next lockdown for Mo Valley Paranormal. We hope you plan to be a part of that. And Tyson has some other news that he brings to the table for this particular show.
Yeah, we unfortunately have more bad news out of the camp of Mr. Ryan Buell. Man, this guy is just on a downward spiral. I don't know if one problem is connected to the other, but here last Friday, it says, according to statecollege.com, paranormal state star faces simple assault charges. Ryan Buell, who founded Penn State's Paranormal Research Society and starred in the reality television series Paranormal State, is again facing legal trouble after an alleged domestic assault in State College. State College police were called at about 7:15 p.m. on Friday to a Wapelani Drive apartment where Buell's boyfriend told police he and Buell had gotten into a verbal argument, according to a criminal complaint. The man reportedly told police that he and Buell began getting into each other's faces and bumping chests, and that Buell scratched his face and neck. According to the complaint, the man said that he then pushed Buell and that Buell then bit the man's finger.
Yikes.
A police officer observed a deep bite that penetrated the fingernail and skin of the tip of the man's finger, as well as scratches on his face and neck. EMS determined the injury to the finger required medical attention. Buell, who did not have any injuries, allegedly told police that he and the man had a verbal argument, but that he did not remember a physical altercation. Buell, 35, was charged with simple assault, a second-degree misdemeanor, and summary harassment. He was arraigned before District Judge Kelly Gillette Walker on Saturday morning, and bail was set at $25,000. A preliminary hearing is scheduled for Wednesday. It's the second time in the past year that Buell has faced trouble with the law in State College. In September, he was charged with felony and misdemeanor theft after allegedly renting a car in August and never returning it. He was arrested on a warrant in South Carolina after the rental agency and State College police reportedly made multiple attempts over the course of about 6 weeks to contact Buell about returning the car. According to court records, a non-jury trial in that case is scheduled for May 18th. So it just seems like, from other reports that I've read, the original call was made because of a potential drug overdose. So I don't know. It says that Mr. Buell says that he doesn't remember a physical altercation, but yet his boyfriend now has the tip of his finger almost nearly bitten off. So obviously there was some kind of altercation, and it's just not any more good news for Ryan. I thought that he was going to try to have his legal troubles behind him, but it seems like there's just more ahead of him now.
It's really sad. I was introduced to Brian while working at another facility back in a number of years back. Actually, I think this was the first year of what was called Paranormal U. The get-together of various paranormal investigators and people and whatever that was held at Penn State.
Yeah.
And that's when I met Ryan. I thought he was a really good guy. I had seen his television show. He brought other, psychic, not psychics necessarily, but other paranormal investigators in to be on a talk show on another radio station. And I thought, geez, he's, really decent guy. And of course, it's like everything else. The persona that you may see someone exhibit on television or radio is completely different from who they are.
Yeah.
But by the same token, boy, I'll tell you what, it's a real surprise on what kind of a downward spiral he's gone into. And by the way, for those of you who may be curious, with the notable exception of cleaner language, Tyson is not playing a character on this radio program. This is pretty much who Tyson is, and with the notable exception of expletives deleted.
And that's a struggle for me, folks. I admit that.
And knowing where you work, that's just part of your daily lingo.
And that's just it. I mean, even my talk, joking around, most people would cringe if they heard me talk, amongst friends. But yeah, I mean, I really gotta I really have to concentrate. You may think, man, that guy is boring. I'm not. It's just I gotta really filter what I say on the radio because I don't want the station to be fined. So.
But it's always been such a surprise to me to see that his life went in this particular direction, and obviously, I don't know about the fortune part. Probably was at a certain point, but the young man received fame and fortune. Okay. Because at a certain point, Paranormal State was not being done for free.
Right.
It wasn't because they just enjoyed going out to, do paranormal investigations. It was that they were making money from, I think that was a TLC original.
A&E.
A&E, you're right. I'm sorry. That was an A&E original. And it, as I say, it's tough to see someone that reaches a certain height and then just absolutely seems to lose touch with reality. But
yeah, and I mean, and those around him, even those around him have kind of put their hands up and 50 yards backed off. Chad Kalick, Michelle Belanger, Chip Coffey, a lot of these people that were regulars on his show have now said, Ryan has a problem. We love him, wish him the best, but right now we're not associated with him in his camp.
Just out of curiosity, has Katrina weighed in on that at all? Katrina Weidman?
No, I have not, because she was a regular investigator for PRS.
Yes.
And so I don't know. She has not made a statement as far as what I know of. I don't know if they're still in contact. They may have had a falling out. Last time I heard, I don't know if he still is, but Ryan came out a while ago, and said that he was bisexual, and that his boyfriend was actually Sergey from the show, the tech guy on PRS. And I don't know if this is the guy that was assaulted or maybe somebody else, but it's just a sad news and a falling out of somebody that was prominent on paranormal TV, reality TV. And it's definitely a black eye for the paranormal reality TV world, paranormal world in general. But
yeah.
We wish him the best and hope that he, takes care of whatever inner demons he has. And, that was one thing I always, differed with Ryan about with his, was speaking with him different times, was that, I don't know if it was because of his upbringing or because of, being like an uber Catholic, that, everything to him was malevolent, demonic in nature. There was no gray, when it comes to, good or bad spirits or whatever you want to call it. He thought if anything was happening paranormal, it had to be some kind of, malevolent in nature. I don't walk that path. I don't believe in that doctrine. But, that was his take on it, and it seems like he has a lot of inner demons himself he has to take care of right now. But we wish him the best, and we hope that he gets on a path of recovery of whatever is he needs to, and if things clear up for him. But he's in the thick of it right now.
Well, I don't like to, and I'm not meaning to demean this, because the power of prayer has been known to do remarkable things for people. And even though Ryan may not be suffering from an illness that typically people pray for, it might not be a bad idea to say a prayer for the young man to maybe get his life back in order. And as Tyson said, confront his inner demons and be able to move on. So if you want to include Ryan Buell in your prayers so that he can recover and get back to the guy that we once knew. And we'll be back with more of this radio program right after this on News Talk 970 WBLF. And welcome back. It is Mo Valley Paranormal Live on News Talk 970 WBLF, our regular Saturday get-together and discussion of the paranormal and the investigation thereof. I'm Dave Shannon. That guy over there is Tyson Lidgett.
Hello, everybody.
And Tyson, the founder and lead investigator of Mo Valley Paranormal, talking so far about some news-type things. If you missed the beginning of the show, I believe you can catch it again on YouTube. I don't think we're being bumped by YouTube anymore.
Oh, really?
For copyright violations. There were some of the music that we played, there were people that complained. So that's why a couple of the shows may not be appearing on YouTube like we had hoped. So at any rate, hopefully everything is on the up and up with that. So if you didn't catch the beginning of the show, you can catch it there. Just to briefly recap, we talked about the upcoming lockdown, which on next Friday, the 5th, will be the day to get your reservations in to be a part of that lockdown. And we also talked a bit about Ryan Buell and the latest problem that he has with the law. And the other thing is, once you get to that fame and fortune area, Tyson, it's kind of tough to become invisible again.
Right.
Even if you just wanted to say, I want to get away from it all, you can't really get away from it all.
No.
It's one of those types of things. So about the best thing you can do at that point is go ahead and head to a rehab. They can keep you pretty anonymous at a rehab somewhere.
And in relatively the spec of TV time that we've had, um, the TV show was on 3 years ago this October,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll still be out, and there's somebody that I don't know from a can of paint, and like, hey, aren't you the ghost guy? And I'm like, yeah, I guess. I'm, and I don't even think about it. I'm like, well, you know, because you do, I've done a couple interviews on TV and this and that, and so I mean, even what little minute, speck of TV time I've had, it is very hard to hide once your face is out there. So I can't even imagine what, when these stars have legal problems, what it must be like. But like we said last segment, we just hope and pray the best for Ryan, that he gets his act together, and for his family to kind of bear the storm of this, and moves on with his life the way it should be. So.
All right. Now, moving on, one of the other things we do in the program is talk about the current run of paranormal reality TV. And right now we have 2 shows in current runs.
Yes.
And those are the Ghost Brothers, which is Friday nights back on their original home, Destination America. And also the Ghost Adventures guys, who have been on Travel Channel from day one, and they continue to be on Travel Channel. So I did not have a time. I did record both of the programs, but I did not get a chance to review them. So Tyson is going to bring us most of the information on these 2 shows, and we'll get started with Jalen, Marcus, and Dalen, the Ghost Brothers.
Yeah, let's hope I don't butcher this. So the Ghost Brothers find themselves in Jamaica.
Jawan, I'm sorry. I said Jalen. It's Jawan.
Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead.
Jawan, okay. I believe they found themselves in Jamaica this week. And I forget what the exact town was. Is it Newport, Jamaica? Something like that. But
Okay.
they investigated Rose Hall. And Rose Hall has been on a couple different paranormal TV shows. The backstory is a wealthy fellow built Rose Hall for him and his mistress, and married her, and she was a practicing voodoo priestess. Well, from one reason or another, maybe because of his business away from the house or whatever, she found that she enjoyed, how should I say this, entertain her time with the slaves of the plantation.
Okay.
Well, when one time the husband came home and found herself entertaining her time with one of the slaves, and severely beat her. Okay, and I don't know what happened to the slave. I imagine during that time he was probably put to death, but in revenge, she kind of one-upped it, and she poisoned him in his coffee, and he died. So she killed her first husband, and took on 2 other husbands after the first one, and the second one was stabbed to death, and the third one was strangled. And
By unknowns, I guess.
Well, it turns out that she had the help of one of her slave lovers kill her 2 following husbands. He was also a practicing voodoo priest, and something happened that she ended up cursing his granddaughter.
Yikes!
And she died, and it said that one night after making love to her while they were still in bed, he killed her, this voodoo priest. And so now, as she is called the Witch of Rose Hall, she is now buried on the plantation in a above ground sarcophagus.
Okay.
So the Ghost Brothers are there, and they are investigating, and they have they have stuff going on, the thumps, the bumps and knocks, whatever. At one point, Dalen is in the bedroom of the Witch of Rose Hall, and during the interview when they're talking to the one caretaker, it was a pretty interesting piece of evidence. As they're talking, a door of the wardrobe pops open and swings open, and they test it, and it latches pretty firmly. There's no windows open, a breeze could have caught, and they open it to see if whatever the angle of the door, the way the door would have swung open, and it didn't. So it was interesting that during the day, during their interview, as they're talking about the Witch of Whitehall, or Rose Hall, I'm sorry, the door swings open to this wardrobe. Well, Dalen says, he says, this is the craziest thing I'm going to do. And he steps inside the wardrobe, closes the door, and he asks if she is there with him. And a couple seconds go by and nothing. Then all of a sudden you hear a, and Dalen
audible.
Yes,
it's disembodied. Okay.
He catches it on his camera, and he hears it, and it's the fastest you've ever seen somebody jump out of a wardrobe. And so he says, he tries to say, are you there? Are you there with me? Was that you? Of course, nothing after that. Meanwhile, Marcus and Jawan are in, I believe it was the dining room, and they're trying to make contact. And of course, their go-to method is the REM pod. Nowadays, it seems like.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how these shows, they seem to lean on, different pieces of equipment to do a majority of their investigating. And you're right, Ghost Brothers this season seems to love the REM pods.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, they were in the basement, which used to be the dungeon. It used to be the dungeon of the mansion, and it's now like a bar eating area. It looks like the way it is, and they're asking questions and they're not getting kind of answers, and Jawan says to Marcus, he's like, you know what? It just feels like there's like absolutely no remorse down here, and then of course the REM pod goes crazy. And he says, are you still afraid of the Witch of Rose Hall? And a couple seconds later, the REM pod goes off. So, I mean, they get a couple REM pod hits when they're asking questions down in what used to be the dungeon, because they said that, the Witch of Rose Hall would, if she would pick one of these slaves to make love to, she would kill them afterwards. So it was a death sentence if she was, chosen for that. And she said that she took pleasure in torturing and killing these slaves. So surprisingly, that they were surprised that they didn't get a lot of the REM pod hits down in the basement. Throughout the night they're walking around, and as they're asking questions, there was a point where during the main floor of the house, they asked a question and knocked twice, and they got 2 knocks in return. And so it did seem to be some kind of intelligent responses to their questions, but a lot of stuff just like may have been a residual type, where they were walking around, they would stop, and you would hear, 2 or 3 footsteps that kept coming. They'd say, well, stop and listen, and you'd hear it again. So, you don't know if it was something actually following them, or if it was just, residual footsteps from a long time ago. They did break off, and Marcus went to the Witch of Rose Hall's tomb, and then Jawan and Marcus went to a graveyard that was on the property as well, and they did some investigating, but really nothing was discovered either one. And then
kind of proving your point about going to where cemeteries are and things.
Right.
It's not going to happen there.
No, and somebody brought up I forget who brought it up. I think Marcus brought up the Johnny Cash song where he mentions, the Rose of Witch Hall, the Witch of Rose Hall buried, 3 husbands under the palm tree or something like that. I don't know what song it was, but so they actually get the SLS and the thermal camera and start going around the property under palm trees, looking to see if there's any kind of activity under the palm trees. Of course, there isn't. They said that, at the end of the program, they gave the official Ghost Brothers stamp that the place is haunted. How that goes. But all in all, I mean, they had some decent evidence. Nothing that was, shattering or anything, but some decent evidence like you would normally see on an investigation.
Well, good for them. As I say, I mean, I know you've said this about the lockdowns, that you'll live vicariously through the people that are maybe there for the first time at a lockdown. And I love watching Ghost Brothers because you're kind of living vicariously through those 3 guys in the same kind of way. So at any rate, we'll come back. We'll talk about Ghost Adventures when the show continues on News Talk 970 WBLF. And welcome back to Mo Valley Paranormal Live, our regular Saturday get-together and discussion of investigating the paranormal and other paranormal activity and news. I'm Dave Shannon. That guy over there is Tyson Lidgett.
Hello, everybody.
And we've been discussing so far this week, talking about the upcoming lockdown. Another way to keep in touch with that is to go to Mo Valley Paranormal's Facebook page and get caught up there. Talked about the latest misgivings of one Ryan Buell.
Yes.
And also reviewed last week's episode of Ghost Brothers in Jamaica. And we roll on now. One other paranormal reality TV show in current run is The Ghost Adventures Guys. And where were they this week?
Los Angeles. They were in Los Angeles investigating, yes. They were at a silent film movie theater. And the backstory to this place was it was built in, I believe, 1942. In the early 90s, there was a double murder there. The owner and the one young lady that worked at the theater were out at the front desk. And a young man got up and went back during a show and asked the young lady if he could have tickets to an advanced screening of some movie that was coming up. And she says, you have to talk to the manager, directing him to the owner. And as he turned to the manager, he pulled out a 357 and said, give me your money. And didn't even give him a chance to get the money and shot him in the face.
Jeez.
And, yeah. I mean, it was told in pretty, graphic detail by the show. And then he turned the gun on the young lady and shot her twice in the chest. And it turns out that the young man who worked in the projection room was dating the young lady and had paid the gunman $25,000 to kill the owner and his girlfriend.
Holy smokes. And this, what year was this?
Early 90s, I believe.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, if you were talking the old days of silent movies, $25,000 would have been like huge.
Right. Well, I mean, that's still a good chunk of change for, I guess, someone who works in a projection room of a movie theater.
Yeah, true enough. Yeah.
But
or as the Ghost Brothers would say, true dat.
Yes, true dat. Okay. But so of course, the show opens up with, I love when Zach waxes philosophical about anything, but he says he loves investigating L.A. because he believes that all the creative spirit in L.A. from movie actors and artists and whatever fuel this paranormal energy that's in Los Angeles. And I didn't know there was so much paranormal activity in Los Angeles, but I guess we do now.
Yeah, that's something that's been off my map.
Yeah, but anyways, so they get in and they do the walk through whatever, and they have the first night they're there, they have their sound guy say that he sees a man walk from a corner of a room into an empty closet. And, he describes the guy, a little bit taller than me, gray hair, whatever. And, Zach believes that they have seen, the apparition of the owner. And he's swearing up and down that it really happened because the sound guy is a cold skeptic and he doesn't believe in this stuff. And he's heard some things, but he's never saw something. So if he says he saw a ghost, he saw it. So, of course, they break out the PSB-7, and they said, he asked the question, did we just see you? And according to Zach, it says yes. When I listen to it with my eyes closed, it doesn't sound like he asked. It's like, so I don't know if it's, maybe I'm just not hearing it well through my TV or something, but he says it was yes. So we got to take him on his word for that. And they are using a thermal camera. And they say that there is a spot on one of the front row seats that shows like somebody's back and lower legs are like somebody was sitting in that seat. And
like Mystery Science Theater 3000?
Right, like somebody was sitting there and got up. And and they swear up and down. Of course, we got to take them for their word that nobody sat in that seat when they caught that on thermal. But of course, Zach has to put this together. He's like, well, what if the owner was sitting there watching us as we're up front here, walked across the front of the theater where our sound guy saw him, and then we just got the yes on the PSB7 Spirit Box. And, they're all excited because Zach is piecing this together, and I'm like, you guys don't have any kind of evidence that that's what happened at all. So, but they bring in, they've worked with him a couple times. It is the psychic couple, quote unquote psychic couple, that the one guy does the readings while the woman draws the images she sees in her head.
Okay, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, well, he says that this is the second night. This is the night of their main investigation. He says that as they come in, what really strikes, the attention of Zach is he sits down in the exact same chair that they had the thermal hit the night before. And Zach is beside himself. He says, I want to scream out loud because he says, the psychic says, this is where I'm supposed to sit down. And he sits down in that chair. And meanwhile, his wife or girlfriend, whoever she is 2 or 3 rows behind him, and she's drawing.
Mm-hmm.
And he says to Zach, do you feel weird? Well, of course, Zach, he's like, well, yeah, I do feel weird. It's strange right here. And he says, well, the man I'm talking to is in you right now. And he says, okay. And he says, I'm gonna have him do something, and I want you to tell me what you're feeling. And a couple seconds later, Zach goes, I feel like I want to run. And he says, what? And he says, I feel like I want to run up and down this aisle. And the guy starts laughing. And Zach says, what are you laughing about? And he says, well, I'm just kind of, scrying, letting my hand move. And he says, I thought I had written down rub legs. He says, I have written down run legs. And, so he says, obviously this guy's letting you know that he's actually there with you because he wants you to run. And, Zach is all elated because now, he says, I want to thank you for, validating that I have some kind of sensibility. And I'm just like, oh God. Okay. So, so obviously, the work on his third eye is doing justice for him. And, the empath stuff it seems to be working out. So they then start their investigation. And you know what? The one thing that bothers me, and has for multiple seasons with Zach and his crew, is whenever Zach has an experience, it is at the forefront of evidence, whether it can be validated or not. Mm-hmm. If he has an experience, that was a huge hit for their evidence collection, whether personal or not. Okay, but if somebody else has an experience and
it's downplayed,
right? It's just, whatever. Well, that happens. Zach is standing there, and the woman has this picture, and it's, I forget the name, Douglas Fairbanks is
okay. Old actor,
right?
Yeah.
And the guy says, I keep getting a Douglas and Fairbanks. Okay, well, the woman draws this picture of a man with a real thin pencil mustache and smoking a cigarette. Well, they pull up a picture on the phone of Douglas Fairbanks, and what do you know? It looks just like him. And they said that he feels that's who he was communicating with. And when he first came in, he says, "I'm talking to someone who, he says, I feel pain in my chest. I may have died of a heart attack." Well, it turns out Douglas Fairbanks died of a heart attack. So, that for whatever reason, Zach's theory is that, Douglas Fairbanks' energy is attached to all these old movies that he's in this movie theater. So he must be there, visiting, whatever. But that's, what they come up with as the team of psychics. So they leave and they begin their investigation. And right away, Zach says, he just screams, he goes, "Oh my God, Aaron, I just saw the face of a person in front of me." Okay. And, Aaron's like, "Whoa, are you serious?" He's like, "Yeah, it was right here.
Dude!
It was right here in front of me." Okay. And of course it can't be validated. It wasn't filmed. It was, whatever. And so they move on. Well, then they're sitting in the theater seats, and Billy Tully goes, "Oh my God." And he's not outright, screaming about it. He goes, "Oh my God." And Zach goes, "What?" He says, "Something dark just moved right in front of me." "What?" "Something dark just moved right in front of me while I'm sitting here." Oh. And he just goes back to doing whatever he's doing, sitting in that seat. And I'm like, I guess that's not as important as the face, a shadow, shadow moving in front of you.
Face.
Right. Isn't as, So they're sitting in the movie theater seats, and they have this squeaking sound, and it sounds like a chair being moved up and down.
Yep.
And they go through this whole process of, okay, they're sitting in the seat, and they all put their hands up. And they're all sitting there with their hands up, and you hear the squeak again. And he's like, "You guys all heard that?" "Yeah, we heard that." "All right, now put your feet up." So now they're putting their feet up, and they got their hands up. They look ridiculous. He says, "I just want you guys to know at home that we're not touching seats anyway, in any kind of fashion." So they got their feet up on the seats in front of them. They got their hands up in the air, and you still hear the seat squeaking, or you hear, and you hear the seat squeaking. So, they check it out, and they find a seat that, they don't think should be down, but it's down, and they move the seat, and it sounds like that. And, he's like, "You know what?" He's like, "What if," he said, "it wasn't just this seat?" He's like, "What if," he says, "multiple spirits are sitting in these seats with us right now, like they're going to watch a show, a movie?" Possibly. It could be residual sound from people putting their seats down from years and years of seeing the movie theater. But they did find a seat that was down and shouldn't be down.
Well, and we're going to have to cut it there.
Oh, really?
We are out of time for this week. Yeah. So we will be back again next week with Mo Valley Paranormal Live on News Talk 970 WBLF. Good night, everybody.
Good night, folks.